بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Usul al-Fiqh. Today inshallah we'll discuss a very important topic, which is al-Hukm al-Shar'i, the religious ruling. In life we have several rulings. And a ruling basically is a conclusion that you reach after introduction. We have legal rulings, like what? For instance, speeding ticket is $75. Felony charge, first degree, 10 years. Or so and so. These are what? Legal rulings that the state ordinate. Then we have rational rulings. Like what? The fire burns. The ship floats. All these are rational rulings. 1 + 1 = 2. And then we have religious rulings. And that's what we will discuss. The religious ruling that we will discuss includes two elements: defining law and customary law. الحكم الشرعي, we have الحكم التكليفي, the defining law, and we have الحكم الوضعي. Both of them are defined as a communication from the lawgiver to the mukallaf which is either a command or an option or custom. That's the definition of both types. Because when I ask you and I tell you, give me an example of a religious ruling. Give me an example of a religious ruling. Pork is haram. That's what? Religious ruling. What's the ruling? Prohibition. Another example: when the sun sets, is that religious ruling? Is that obligatory? Is that? No, it is still a religious ruling, but this is wad'i. Allah made for us a condition, which is the sunset. Do you do the sunset or the sunrise? No. You're not the one who do it. But when you eat the pork, yes, you are the one who is eating the pork. So these are two types. So we will start first with the defining law, which is al-hukm al-taklifi. Taklif means burden, to carry burden. Mukallaf, the one who is able to carry the burden, the one who is able to be responsible. And who's the mukallaf according to Islam? The one who attains puberty and what? Of a sane mind. That's the mukallaf. This is the mukallaf in Islam. The one who reached the age of puberty and of a sane mind. So what exactly is the age that we're talking about here? It depends. There is no specific age. But for instance, in law, you may say the mukallaf is the one who reached 18 years old, for instance. But in Islam, it is the one who reached the age of puberty and of a sane mind. He is able to carry the burden of the defining law. And the defining law is divided to 5 rulings. What are the rulings of Sharia? How many are they? 5. What are they? Tell me. Fard, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. Where does halal fit here? Where does mandub fit? Where does sunnah fit? Good. So how many do we have? 5. Let's start from the top. What is it? Fard. Fard? Or wajib?
Differentiate.
They are the same?
From the Quran is the fard. The majority say it's the same.
From the Quran it is fard. From the sunnah it is wajib. Who agrees with this falsehood? So we have wajib or fard. We have mustahab. Then we have mubah. And then we go to makruh. And then haram. These are the 5 ahkam. Ahkam al-taklifiyya al-khamsa. That's what we call them. So, how do we include all of them in one definition? What's the definition of defining law? A communication from the lawgiver addressed to the mukallaf which consists of a demand or an option. خطاب الله المتعلق بأفعال المكلفين على وجه الاقتضاء أو التخيير. خطاب Allah, that's a communication from the lawgiver. Because basically wajib, mandub, haram. Who told you it is haram? The lawgiver, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Consists what? That communication consists of what? Demand. Haram, is it a demand? Yes, it is a demand to avoid. Wajib, it is a demand to do. Or option, which is mubah. You have a demand which is strict demand, that could be haram or wajib, and you have a demand which is not binding, that is makruh or mandub. An unbinding command to avoid, that is makruh. An unbinding command to do, that is what? Mandub. And we will discuss them. So I want you to know the definition and I want you to know the 5 rulings, because at this point it is shameful on any student of knowledge if he is asked what are the 5 ahkam of Sharia and you say I don't know. Now the first one is the wajib or the fard. Which one do you choose? Is there a difference between fard and wajib, or they are the same? According to the Hanafi school of thought, there is difference. What is that difference? No. According to the Hanafi school of thought, fard has higher authority. When it comes from undoubtful source. And it has undoubtful meaning. That is fard. So it could be either from the Quran or from the mutawatir sunnah. It is still fard. And it has what? Exclusive meaning. So the fard is what is definitive in its meaning, and it was proven through definitive source. This is the fard. What about the wajib? Its source is definitive, but its meaning is what? Doubtful. So it is in a lower degree. An example for this would be what? Obligation of Hajj. Is it fard or wajib? It is fard. Why? If you say hadith, then you have to further prove another thing, because this hadith may be solitary, so it doesn't have definitive. While if you quote the ayah, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ, and Hajj to the house of Allah is a due that mankind owe to Allah, then it becomes definitive, and there is no if or but on the meaning. What does it mean? It is an obligation. But transaction of Ina, for instance, the obligation of avoiding this transaction, is it wajib or fard? Ina, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that it is haram, so you have to avoid it. But the source of it is what? Ahad. So it is wajib. Now why they do this? Because scholars, they were very righteous. And when they say fard, that means it is like on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are saying this is obligatory. Fard. There is no if or but. But when you say it is wajib, it is still binding, but in a lower level. Now, what are the similarities between fard and wajib? And what are differences? We took the difference. We said, according to the Hanafi school of thought, whatever came from a definitive source, and has a definitive meaning, that's fard. It is different from wajib, is that wajib is not definitive in its meaning. This is difference. What are similarities?
Definitive source. They're both binding.
They are both binding. Very good. What else?
They're both from almost definitive.
When we say they are definitive, or they are both binding, what does that mean? What does that mean when we say they are definitive? What if you don't do fard or wajib?
Sin.
Are you blameworthy? Yes, you are. Both of them, they share the same thing. You are blameworthy. Now, one other difference between fard and wajib. If you deny fard, what will happen? You are out of the fold of Islam. Why? Because Allah is saying this, there is no doubt about it, yet you are still saying no. So as if you are rejecting it. But when it is wajib and you deny it, are you out of the fold of Islam? No. When you say Ina is halal, I will do it. Drinking alcohol is what? Haram. So avoiding drinking alcohol is what? Fard or wajib? Fard. What about drinking something that intoxicates you? Haram. Avoiding that thing, which we call Z-drink.
Z-drink?
Yeah. Does it become fard or wajib? Now you need to make analogy that this Z drink is just like khamr, due to the same effective cause, which is intoxication. So you have to avoid it. Someone came and said, no, I will not avoid it. It doesn't have the same ruling. Can you say he's out of the fold of Islam? No. See, that's one major difference. In practice, in ibadat, what is the difference between fard and wajib?
If you
If you miss the fard. In prayer, if you miss the fard, what will happen? Prayer is invalid. If you miss wajib, you make it up. Okay? These are the differences. Now, according to the majority of scholars, they are both the same. How they define the wajib? Very beautiful, simple definition. The wajib is the thing that the one who does it will be rewarded, and the one who doesn't do it will be punished. That's it. What if you do it, you will be rewarded, and what if you will not do it, you will be punished. That's the wajib. ما يأثم تاركه ويؤجر فاعله. The thing that you will be rewarded if you did it, and you will be punished if you left it. That is what? Wajib. Now, again, what's the fruit? If we say it is different according to the Hanafi and it is not different according to the majority. According to the majority, in prayer, whether you miss fard or wajib, according to the Hanafis, it is the same. You have to do it. If you miss it on purpose, then what? Your prayer is null. There's no difference. But they both agreed that denying something which is known by necessity from the religion takes you out of the fold of Islam. They all agreed on that. So this is the first one, which is what? Wajib. How can we divide the wajib? There are several divisions. First, from the number of people who are adhering to it, we have personal obligation and collective obligation. Prayer, if I told you prayer, is it personal or collective? Personal. Can you give me an example of collective obligation? Janaza. Jum'ah, is it collective or individual? Congregational prayer. Is i'tikaf wajib? Collectively? According to Ahnaf. Okay, this is from what perspective? The number of people. Then we have contingent and absolute. What does that mean? Contingent means what?
Dependent on some future event or dependent on something else, then you can do it. Like
مضيق and موسع. مطلق and مقيد. Absolute means you have to do it. Quantified and unquantified. Another division. And lastly, we have wajib muayyan and we have wajib mukhayyar. Specific and optional. Like what? If you miss a prayer, what should you do? You make it up. Can you say, I don't feel like making it up, I will pay $10? Can you? What does that mean? It is muayyan, specified. While if you break your promise, your oath, what do? You could either feed 10 people or clothe them or free a slave. It is your option. You say, I don't want to free a slave, even if you had slaves. It's your option. No one will tell you, no, you have to do it. Then if you could not, you can fast 3 days. But there are obligations that you have to do them. Ramadan. Is it flexible or strict? Can you say, I will fast Ramadan after Shawwal? Or someone said, I am tired now, I need to sleep, and I have to have a meal before I start my fasting. So he woke up 12 p.m. and he said, I will fast now and I will break my fast 4 hours later after the sunset. Can you do that? No. Why? There is a specific time. While making up the days of Ramadan, is it specific that on the 13th of Shawwal you have to make up the days? No. Okay? All these are divisions of what? Of wajib. What are the forms of wajib? How do you know? And that's again the fruit. As a student of knowledge, as future scholar, alim, as a good Muslim who wants to know the rulings, you should know from the moment you read the ayah, the hadith, whether it is wajib or haram or makruh. How do you know? And we already took that in the first semester. In the book, page 188. Go back and read. Because in the book, we mentioned that the wajib could come in the term farad or kataba. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, kutiba alaykum as-siyamu. It is prescribed on you. قد فرض الله لكم تحلة أيمانكم. أقيموا الصلاة. Direct command. See, so there are several forms of knowing the wajib. And we already took them. Again, this is only repetition, but with more details, a little bit more details. So if you did not study very well first semester, you will struggle now. But if you did study very well, you will not have it very difficult. This is the wajib. Now we go to the next part, which is mandub. What's the definition of mandub? What you will be rewarded if you did it, but you will not be punished if you did not do it. That's the definition of what? Mandub. Is there a difference between mandub and sunnah? Yes? What's the difference? What's the difference between mandub and sunnah? There is some sunnah you will be punished if you did not do it. That's not in Usul al-Fiqh.
It depends upon how you're defining sunnah. Because depending on
according to Usul al-Fiqh, what's the definition of sunnah? Now, if we're talking in Aqidah, yes, I may agree with you that leaving sunnah is punishable. But in Usul al-Fiqh, never. Are they the same?
Sunnah could be leaving something as well. Oh, here you're talking about only doing something. The sunnah could be
leaving something.
Yeah.
What about mandub? Couldn't it be also leaving something?
That would be the fourth one. That would be makruh.
According to many scholars, mandub and sunnah, both of them are the same. But to some scholars, there is difference. There is accurate difference. Mandub is what was done more frequently by the Prophet ﷺ. And sunnah is what was done few times. So for instance, in that aspect, if we say the 2 rak'ah before dhuhr, is it sunnah or mandub? Mandub. While shaving the entire hair or leaving the entire hair, that's a sunnah because the Prophet ﷺ did it. So if you say it is the same, that is correct. But if you say no, there is accurate difference, what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned or did frequently, that is mandub, and what he did occasionally, once or twice, that is what? Sunnah. That's also correct. But either way, what's the definition, technical definition of mandub? What you will be rewarded if you did it, and you will not be punished if you did not do it. True or false? Isn't that the definition? Yes or no? Okay. Can a mandub become obligatory? What if someone leaving recommended every time? Like he never prays anything except the obligatory prayer.
That's okay.
Is that okay? Yes, it is. But can a mandub be elevated to the level of obligatory?
Then it's not mandub anymore.
Then it's not mandub. Could this happen?
Yes.
When something by default is mandub and then it becomes wajib? Marriage. If the person is scared, he will fall into zina.
Oh, good example.
No, that's not a good example.
What? Yeah.
Because here, the act itself is different from different perspective. The case was changed. But it is not for the same person, the same act. It is mandub, and then it's becoming fard. Okay, this issue, according to the Hanafi school of thought, is possible. If you start an act which is mandub, like fasting. Today you woke up and you said, I will fast. Then you said, I will not fast. I will break my fast. The action itself was what, to begin with? Mandub. So if it's mandub, it's recommended, then do you have the option to terminate it? They say if you start a mandub act, you have to what? Finish it. So it become obligatory. Not that it is obligatory to begin with, but you made it obligatory upon yourself. The majority of scholars say no. It is your option. Still your option. Mandub is mandub. Now we go to the other side. Haram. What is the definition of haram? What you will be punished if you did it, and you will be rewarded if you avoided it. Try always to minimize the words and to choose the best words. What is punishable if done and rewardable if avoided. That is the haram. How can we define haram? How can we know from the Quran? You come to read and the term hurrima, when it's mentioned, prohibited unto you. La, the term la, don't, do not, approach not. What else? How do we know these forms? Again, go back to the book, few pages after the forms of wajib, page 194. you will have the forms of haram. An example for haram, something that is prohibited. Zina. Now, we have two types of haram. Haram by itself, for its own sake, and haram لغيره, for another reason. Next, we have the makruh. What's the definition of makruh?
Rewarded. Rewarded if you.
That which you will be rewarded if.
And no sin if you do.
If you avoid and is disliked if you.
That which you will be rewarded if you avoided, and you are not punished if you did it. That's the definition of makruh. What's rewardable if avoided and not punishable if done. That is the makruh. Again, some scholars in the Hanafi school of thought, makruh is divided to two types. Makruh karahat tahrim and makruh karahat tanzih. Just like the fard and wajib, makruh karahat tahrim is also prohibited, and you are blameworthy if you did it. But the difference is that it did not come from definitive meaning. It has a definitive source but not definitive meaning. While haram, it came from definitive meaning, and it has definitive meaning, and it came from definitive source. Then we have makruh karahat tanzih, which is the regular makruh. What is the example of makruh?
Eating like onions or something and going to pray salah. Eating something that's bad.
Eating something that has bad smell and going for prayer. Fasting Saturday alone. Is it makruh or haram? Makruh. Actually, most scholars, they have this differentiation between makruh, karahat tanzih and karahat tahrim. Now, if you go back to the statements of the scholars, when they say akrahuhu, karahiyah literally means hate. I hate it. But students of the scholars understood from their saying akrahuhu means forbidden. But again, because they were righteous, they did not use the term haram, because that's the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is saying makruh, but he meant what? Haram. That is to some scholars. So whatever is makruh karahat tahrim is closer to haram. And whatever is makruh karahat tanzih, this is the makruh, the regular makruh. Now, for instance, in the Shafi'i school of thought, an example for this would be chess, playing chess. What's the ruling in the Shafi'i school of thought? Is it forbidden or disliked? It is actually forbidden. Although Shafi'i rahimahullah himself said what? Akrahuhu. Why? Because it's not from the Prophet ﷺ. He did not say it is haram. There is no ayah. So, who gave you the authority to come and say it is prohibited? Because when you say it is prohibited, as if you are saying Allah made it prohibited, or the Prophet ﷺ made it prohibited. It is as if you're saying if you do it, Allah will punish you. Okay? Another definition would be for makruh is a non-binding command to avoid something. When it is binding to avoid it, it becomes what? Haram. That's why it is binding. This is the makruh. Then we have mubah. What's the definition of mubah?
Not rewarded or punished.
What you will neither be rewarded nor punished if you did it. Not rewarded or nor punished, that's not correct sentence. But you will neither be rewarded nor you will be punished if you did it. An example for this would be what? Eating bananas. Right? Wearing a jacket. This is what? Mubah. What about halal?
The same thing. It's explicitly mentioned.
Is it the same thing?
No, they differentiate. I think they said that's the one that's explicitly mentioned that this is okay to get. Like
Some scholars differentiated and they said if it was explicitly mentioned that it is permissible, then it becomes what? Halal. But if the text is silent, then it is what? Mubah. But from consequences perspective, it is what? The same. What are the forms of mubah? When it is mentioned exclusively halal. Again, go back to the book for the forms in the first semester. Now, we have 4 types of mubah. We have 4 types of mubah. Can a mubah become haram? Yes? How? Think of a situation where mubah becomes haram.
that if you overeat and it makes you sick, you know it's going to make you die.
If you eat without stopping until what?
You choke yourself.
You choke yourself.
Following the Christians,
Following the Christians?
yeah, you do this halal, but on Jews,
You go to medical sorry. You go to medical school in Las Vegas when you're going to be gambling if you go there.
That's weird example. Going to study medicine in Las Vegas.
I know 2 friends who went to Las Vegas to study, learning about it.
Wearing pigskin jacket.
No, wearing pig skin jacket is haram.
Could be as simple as eating before you start fast? I mean, eating after fasting. After fasting.
Okay, can mubah become wajib?
Yes.
Mandatory?
Yeah.
What's the example?
If you're about to die, just eating in general is mubah.
Eating in general is mubah. But if you are striving to death and the only thing you have,
Banana. You have to eat that.
do you have to?
Yes.
Eating banana in principle is what?
Mubah.
But in that specific scenario,
But,
It's fine, you gotta save yourself.
yeah, that's more harm than-
you have to save yourself.
Suicide's haram.
Can a mubah become makruh or mandub? Again, these are the types that are mentioned in the book. Lots of reading. You have lots of reading for this chapter. Many examples. And we will stop here, inshallah.